The whole village were happy. A young Nigerian couple were going to get married, and this was a cause for celebration. Everyone would participate in the celebration, which consisted of 3 parts. But whilst the second part of the ceremony was in progress, the bride's pet attacked one of the guests, and as a result, he saved the lives of all of the others. You can't imagine what that girl was wearing underneath her colourful skirt. Tashira was a Nigerian girl who, following the customs of her village, was going to marry Shakir, a young worker who during the time of their courtship had won over his in-laws because he had worked with great precision and skill in their lands. He had also given a good dowry to Tashira's family, so there weren't any reasons for the wedding not to take place. Tashira stood out in the village due to her beauty. This caused some young women to be envious of her, but she never paid attention to those negative attitudes and always focused on making something productive with her life. The news of the marriage didn't please some of the girls because they weren't able to marry yet. However, the young woman didn't pay any attention to them. She dedicated herself to preparing everything for that special day. Nigerian weddings are totally different from those celebrated in other parts of the world, such as America. In Nigeria, the traditional marriage ceremony consists of 3 parts according to ethnicity. In their case, Tashira and Shakir would perform the Orobo ritual, followed by the religious ceremony and finally the great banquet for their village. In the Orobo ceremony, they worship the ancestors of the family, God, and the representations of what they consider above the physical and earthly. According to tradition, the spirits of relatives who have left this world are present during this ritual. For the Orobo, the human being is not only flesh and bones, but is also formed by a spiritual self. This marriage was carried out in Tashira's house, and there Shakir, along with his family and friends, brought drinks and different products that the bride's family had requested for the guests to consume. And they also brought offerings for their ancestors. With this important ritual, the groom's relatives sought to look good with those of the bride. All the rituals, negotiations, offerings, and tributes to the spirits and the feast of what Shakir's family carried happened without any inconvenience until finally Tashira's father formalised the marriage. After all this, the bride finally appeared with a colourful dress and a cap on her head, and together with her boyfriend, they fulfilled the established rituals and signed the Orobo document of union in marriage. At the end of the ritual, they waited about 2 hours to be able to carry out the religious marriage. This was the biggest part since the entire village was involved. In the first, there were only the relatives of both bride and groom and the closest friends of the future husband. Tashira changed her colourful outfit for a conventional wedding dress and put on her makeup whilst her family took care of all the details to make the banquet a success. The ceremony was set in the temple, which was arranged in an impressive way according to the customs of the religion. Everything seemed to be ready, and Tashira had asked to dress Ubu, her beloved puppy. He was 6 years old and always by her side. Ubu was her inseparable friend, and she pampered him like a member of the family. For this occasion, she asked to make Ubu a beautiful suit, and one of her sisters was in charge of dressing him. Tashira and Shakir were going to live in a separate house, and in it they had prepared a little house for Ubu. The bride was used to sleeping with him, but her future husband told her that he couldn't agree with that because he was allergic to dogs. She understood this. However, the young man couldn't prevent her from bringing her faithful pet to the ceremony. The change of clothes and makeup took Tashira more time than she expected, so she was very nervous. She went walking from her house to the church. She was with her whole family surrounding her, and inside the church was Shakir waiting for her with great anticipation. Everyone applauded when they saw her arrive. Everyone except the girls who envied her. She walked happily through the church, and the Reverend began the ceremony. However, it was interrupted by Ubu, who began to bark incessantly, which upset everyone. Tashira was sorry and released her boyfriend's hand to reassure her beloved puppy, but he didn't quieten. She took him in her arms, and he looked at her as if he were trying to tell her something. The bride was worried, thinking about why he could be like this. Her father was so upset that he told Tashira's sister to take the animal out of the temple. The girl obeyed. But as she passed next to one of the benches, Ubu lost control and began to bark louder. The girl had to take him in her arms, but he was so reluctant to leave. One of the young women who was seated looked nervously and asked loudly for the dog to be taken out. Once Ubu was outside the temple, he took advantage of the girl's carelessness and ran inside again to start barking at this one young woman in particular. The little dog, who wasn't big, bit into the woman's dress and began to pull it until he made her stand up from the bench. Now she was outside of the temple, he kept pulling at the colourful clothes she was wearing while she yelled at him to let go of her, saying he was as annoying as his owner. But Ubu ignored it and kept pulling her away. The bride did not recognise her pet. He had never attacked anyone. Everyone was so stunned. They did not intervene in the matter, but the surprise came when suddenly there was an explosion. The guest to whom the puppy had barked and barked had explosives under her dress and apparently intended to kill all the guests of the ceremony. It was thanks to Ubu that all the other lives were saved, even though he sacrificed himself for all. The bride was destroyed by seeing Ubu's bravery. She waited for the ceremony to finish, then went to collect the remains of the heroic animal. She deposited them in a grave that she had made by herself. The third part of the marriage, which was the banquet, was held in honour of the animal. There was no music. Everyone respected Tashira's pain. Nobody knew why that young woman wanted to commit such an inhumane act. It was speculated that it was out of envy, but ultimately life gave her what she deserved. Tashira and Shakir were happy despite that unfortunate event on their wedding day. Thank you for watching today's video. Don't forget to like and share the video. See you soon!